Hey there and welcome. Are you a woman who is unapologetically ambitious, but you're also deeply focused on honoring God, loving your family well, and pursuing meaningful work? Well, you've come to the right place. My name is Dana Byers, and you and I are going to be fast friends. Let's get started. Before we get started today, I want to take just a moment to share with you a recent podcast review that I received. She said, Dana has a very soothing, authoritative tone that makes you want to continue to listen to her and all her fabulous tips and tools. She has great ideas about how to be a better version of you. I love her podcast on dodging coaching. It's spot on understanding about why people don't invest in coaching. You have to check out that episode. H.C. Edwards, thank you so much for this 5-star review. If you're listening to my podcast and it has served you well, please take just a moment and leave me a 5-star review. That's going to help so many more people get access to this free podcast. Well, hi there, everyone. I hope that today's podcast episode finds you quite well. I would say that I am generally well, but my heart is a little heavy today, to be completely honest with you. And I'm just going to share with you an experience I had recently just to give you a little bit of insight about how I think and to give you some ideas about my faith. I think a lot of you might have questions. I've had some women reach out and say, well, I'm interested in working with you. I'm not sure what you believe. So I'll just start by saying that not long ago, I sat in a room of acquaintances. These are people I really didn't know at all. But they do follow Jesus. And they were engaged in a conversation that I really can't think of a better way to describe it except that it felt like a witch hunt, okay? And that phrase kept coming to mind, witch hunt. So I literally looked it up. Is this an appropriate phrase to use? I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but the definition is that a witch hunt is an attempt to find and punish a particular group of people who are being blamed for something, often simply because of their opinions and not because they have actually done anything wrong. It really stirred me up a lot to sit in the midst of that conversation and observe some of the behaviors and the comments being said. And I think we do a lot of witch hunting in the church. There's a lot of friendly fire. Friendly fire it's literally shooting that is hitting you from your own side, not from the enemy. And like it or not, we've become quite good at that in the church. And when I say the church, I don't just mean the church I attend. I mean a lot of churches, the capital C global church. And it occurred to me, as I've kind of been praying through this experience for a little while now, it occurred to me that one thing I can do is use this little platform of a podcast that I have here with you. And I can use this platform that I have to call myself out and to call myself really into being aware of any behavior if I have that in my life, but also to invite you also into stopping this behavior if that's something that you're experiencing a lot in your local community of people who follow Jesus. You see, if we as believers, if we are so focused on judging other people's churches, other teaching, how other people live their lives, other people's political views, then I believe we lose. And what we lose is we lose our focus, we lose any chance at unity, and we lose our purpose. I also think we lose countless opportunities to share the love of Jesus with other people. And I know the world is watching. I am heartbroken at times by how we, the church, can be so self-absorbed as to judge each other. We miss the chance to include other people whom we can learn from. So this might all seem a little bit vague to you as I'm kind of unfolding for you the description of what happened, but I'm just not giving out a lot of details because I don't wish to engage in what I experienced by perpetuating that behavior. You know, I don't want to call people out publicly. I don't want to shame individuals. I don't want to judge their interpretation of scripture. But I do, however, want to use this experience to make a point that might answer some questions for you. You know, I love Jesus. I am reading my Bible and praying regularly. I do attend church. I'm part of a small group of fellow believers who love and challenge and support me. I have worked in churches, but I also lament the church at times. And I'm part of it. You know, we can get so busy doing church that we don't reflect Jesus to people who might look different or live in a different way than we do. So sometimes I struggle to, I honestly even struggle sometimes to say that I coach Christian, I'm saying that in quotes, that I coach Christian women because the word Christian, that definition has taken on a negative definition in many circles that I don't want to embrace that definition or perpetuate it. So I don't want to exclude someone from my coaching community who is struggling maybe with how to live out her faith because she's been exposed to a definition of Christian that really isn't biblical at all. So a lot of the women in my community, of course, they're not afraid to use the word Christian. It's not illegal or wrong, but we really identify as people who are following Jesus. We do consider ourselves Christians. We want to become more like him. We want to know him and embrace him and exemplify Christ. But we struggle a lot of times. Now, I won't speak for my whole community, but some of my clients and me, and certainly people who are in my personal life, we struggle with what the word Christian can mean to different communities. So in this setting, in this experience I had a while back where there was a lot of judgment going on, it broke my heart. I really struggled with it. And I hated the feeling of walking out of an environment that was meant to be Christ-like and feeling that there was a lot of friendly fire. And, I heard it said in that experience, someone said that we can focus on self-awareness so much that we don't focus on God. And I actually agree with that. You hear me a lot talking about self-awareness and how important it is. But I agree that we don't want to worship ourselves, right? We just want to understand ourselves enough and how people experience us so that we can know God better, that we can bring him glory. I love coaching because it provides me awareness. I get to celebrate that awareness. I get to gain understanding. The Spirit gives me insight. I worship God for that. I celebrate the wins, but I worship God. My wins come from him, and I get to know him better along the way. But the irony of that comment about being so self-absorbed by becoming too self-aware and not focusing on God, I think that is what we, as the church, not just mine per se, but the capital C church, the bride of Christ, I believe that we can get so focused on one people group being so wrong, or one political issue being the absolute worst, or bringing attention to what we are against. We can get so focused on those things as well that we stop focusing on God and our mission as the church. So please know that I cannot say any of this from a place of judgment. I really had to sit and wrestle with these thoughts to try to get my heart in the right place before I shared this with you, because I am part of the church. Therefore, I believe I'm part of the problem. We aren't yet the full expression of what I personally believe is God's vision for us. The church can be two-faced. On the surface, we can be extremely welcoming, yet we can be very exclusionary behind the scenes. And I don't want to contribute to that, but I also have to admit, I don't feel called to completely abandon the church by any stretch of the imagination. I just haven't seen unity done well, but I do long to be part of that. I long to be part of seeing unity done well. So personally, while I've been processing through this, journaling through this, praying through this, a verse came to mind. It's from Psalm 27:13, and the verse is this. It's David, and he's saying, "I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living." So in Psalm 27, some context there is, it's a place that a lot of pastors will share if someone is feeling despair. And I have felt despair about us as a church, as the global church, not because I can judge or not because I am perfect and the church is not. That's not true at all. I just don't love the feeling of it yet. And I will say I have seasons like this. Sometimes it's not as big of an issue to me, and sometimes I experience something that feels really off, that doesn't feel in agreement with what I see in Scripture or what I see in the example of Christ. So if you feel despair, like me on occasion, take a look at Psalm 27. David is seeking safety in God's house. David was confident in the Lord. I talk a lot about confidence. I love working with women to increase their confidence. And I think that's important. But it's also important to remember our final and absolute confidence is in God himself. He is our source. He is God. We are not. So David is trusting God to protect him from his enemies. At this point, when he wrote Psalm 27, depending upon, which theologian you follow, David was either fleeing his son Absalom, who was trying to steal the throne, or when David wrote this, he might have been hiding from Saul, who was jealous and pursuing him. So I'm not exactly sure what moment in time David wrote this, but I do believe he felt hunted down. I do believe he felt uncomfortable. I believe he felt uncertain. He felt afraid. And yet, he says in verse 13, I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And when that verse came to mind, I was thinking, God, I do see your goodness in the church. I'm not here to say the church is bad. That's not true at all. I do see God's goodness. I also think we get in his way at times by our behavior within the church. And I love that after verse 13, David goes on to encourage those of us who might be experiencing despair or lament. He says in verse 14, wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. So as I look at that, I think, a question that comes out of that is, okay, God, how do I wait? And that might sound like a silly question, but I think it's a question God loves to hear. Imagine a little toddler asking you, how do I do something? It's such a cute, sweet, innocent question, but it's so difficult to answer, right? But when I've been talking to God about this, how do I wait, God? I think for me, it's to continue showing up in the church. Try to be an example and a voice of kindness. Be open to being wrong. And I want us to take heart, friends. Those of you who are listening who lament how we show up sometimes as followers of Jesus, may we see God restore the church to a place of unity, of justice, and biblical community. May we contribute to that vision. May we wait upon the Lord as he works in our hearts. May we keep showing up. Together, we can emulate the unconditional love and grace that we have received that we could never deserve or earn. So if you've ever had interest in working with me, but you wonder if my beliefs kind of agree with yours or not, know that I welcome into the Dana Byers coaching community all types of women who love Jesus and are seeking him, but we don't necessarily all embrace the exact same theology. And I think that this is an important place for me to say that because you'll see over time that I occasionally might share books or coaching tools or interview people for my emails or my podcast episodes whom I don't completely align with spiritually. Now, I don't find these people to have dangerous beliefs, so I'm sharing what they're bringing in a spirit of learning. But if this is a problem for you, I respect that. There is surely a better coach out there for you, and I want you to be part of a community where you feel that you belong and that you can be you. But if you are open to pursuing God, to obeying him, to putting down harsh words for other believers or people groups, then join us. If you are committed to bashing other churches or judging well-intentioned pastors' messages and ignoring social justice, you will not find your time in our coaching community to be enriching or helpful. And I really don't think I can say that any more clearly. I hope that you feel the love behind these words as I share them with you. This little discourse, if you will, that I've just shared with you on the church and our contribution to that and our desire to bring about change, I think this is a great introduction for what I want to share with you today and what we're going to coach on a little bit. Because right now, we're going to shift into the episode, and I'm going to share with you some thoughts on how we can handle the inevitable changes and uncertainties that life throws our way, especially during these challenging times. So specifically, we're going to take a deep dive into a very common response to stress and uncertainty. And that response is playing the victim. So I've certainly lived in this type of energy level, to be entirely upfront with you. I've had seasons of my life where I've just thought, man, this isn't going to get any better. Some of my responses were intentional and some of them were not my best moments, okay? I'm not coming at this from the perspective of an expert. I'm coming at this from someone who has experience in playing the victim, but also experience in getting God's help to shift out of that energy level. For example, there have been times when I've thrown up my hands and felt that we as the church will never get it right. And that's a pretty strong thought to have, but I have felt that way during seasons. But I don't feel that way right now. I lament, but I have hope. And what we will discuss today will show you some of how, the ways I practically process the feeling or the experience of thinking I'm a victim or that something can't get better, when I feel very uncertain, when it feels like things cannot improve. So when I sat down to jot out, this outline for this episode, I really have the same intention I do for every episode, and that is to help one woman. There will be many of you listening, but maybe it just helps one of you, and that's okay with me. It might be you. I hope it is. I want to help one woman get her immediate lift, feel spiritually lighter, to be able to feel empowered to stop or start something, to make a decision, to take action, or intentionally refrain from taking action. So before I hit record every time, I just pray and revisit this intent to bring to you some alternative ideas, some educational ideas for you to consider in the hopes of unlocking something in your mind or in your heart as you're on this journey of pursuing God, of trying to understand what's happening in the area or areas of your life where you might be experiencing this victim mentality. So here we go. Okay, so today I want to share with you how to identify whether or not you are operating out of a victim mindset and help you shift out of that behavior if it's not serving you well. So you see, change is a constant, but recently it feels like there's a lot of uncertainty everywhere, right? I talk to my girlfriends over coffee. I read the news on occasion. I hear from loved ones, they're waiting for medical tests, things like this. We're often faced with unexpected twists and turns, which can bring stress and confusion into our lives. And while it's natural to wish for less stress and more certainty, I want to naturalize that. It can be natural to wish for less stress and more certainty. What we truly desire is to learn how to manage our stress reactions better. I'm going to say that again. It's okay for you to wish to have less stress and more certainty, but hear me out. I believe the true desire you have is to learn how to navigate it better, to manage your stress reactions better, because we might not have control over what happens to us. Well, we definitely don't have control over what happens to us, but we do have control over our responses. So when a few years ago, I earned a certification to become a master practitioner for the Energy Leadership Index. I earned that from the Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching. I learned that we all view the world through a set of filters. In fact, this episode is going to be completely based on my interpretation of the Energy Leadership Index and what I learned from the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. So, they taught me that if you're wearing blue-colored glasses, if the lenses are blue, well, of course, the world looks blue to you. But if you're wearing glasses that have green-colored lenses in them, well, everything looks green to you. And I'm sharing that concrete example with you because we all literally have filters that impact how we experience life, the influences of people in the world around us, and literally the way we see things, the perspectives that we have and choose when we look at scenarios. So these kind of filters that we have, they form the basis of our belief system and the way we approach our situations, the way we view them. So in many instances, these filters could help us become successful by our own personal definition, whatever successful means to you. Those filters that you have could help you make successful progress in your life. But in other aspects, these same filters that you have could be limiting you or creating tension for you or cognitive dissonance. So these filters, they really shape the way that we show up, the way we appear, how we function in our relationships, whether it's at work or at home. And these filters also affect the reactions or responses that we have to situations and people all throughout every aspect of our life. So the Energy Leadership Index assessment reveals the specific filters that you've developed and how they're influencing your life. Now, today I'll be talking specifically about level 1 energy in the Energy Leadership Index assessment, and that is kind of playing the role with that victim mentality. Now, if you aren't familiar, if you're saying, okay, Dana, hold up, what the heck is the ELI or the Energy Leadership Index? It is an attitudinal assessment that I offer my clients. Every client in my 10-hour confidence transformation course receives this assessment free when they join the course. It's an incredible value. I love giving it away because it was so helpful to me when I stopped the burnout cycle that I was in for 10 years. That cycle stopped in 2017 when God really started working through my understanding of the Energy Leadership Index energy levels and how I was showing up and how I was actually, for lack of a better term, kind of my own worst enemy. I was not doing myself any favors in the way I approached work, parenting, marriage, finances, you name it. I was not doing myself a lot of favors there. So if you want to learn more holistically about what the ELI is, go back and listen to the last episode. I share with you all the 7 energy levels, what they are, how we show up when we do that, But for today's purposes, I'm really going to look at level 1 energy, that feeling that things can't get better, we can't change. So we're going to explore the way that people typically respond to stressful situations. So as I share this information with you, I want you to think about a recent stressful event or some news that you received that was not good news in your opinion. And I want you to reflect on the reaction that you had in that experience. How did you react? It's really insightful for you to see how you habitually respond and how a victim response might appear in various, but probably not all, situations of your life. So we're going to look at really a few different ways that the victim mentality can show up. And the first one is the victim mentality is a response to stress or change. It involves feeling helpless and allowing the situation to control you. It's a common but detrimental way that we handle stress. We might have a lot of complaints and experience misery. That can become the norm. But there are no steps taken to improve the situation if we stay in this level 1 energy. And this approach can negatively impact both your physical and your mental health if you stay in this mindset for a very long time when faced with uncertainty or stress. So the victim mentality, like I said, comes straight from that level 1 energy explained in the Energy Leadership Index. Go back and listen to last week's episode if you want to learn what all 7 of those are. It's going to help broaden your understanding. But today we're looking at that victim energy, which is a small piece of the larger framework that I help my clients work within. So the victim mentality involves seeing yourself as a passive recipient of negative circumstances. Everything happens to you. So often feeling powerless and unable to change the situation are what a lot of your thoughts are going through your head whenever you're feeling that way. So I'm going to give you 10 examples of how we can play the victim in our own lives, whether we intend to or not. But I feel it's important to start first by saying that you might see yourself represented in some of these examples, and that is okay. In fact, I would be surprised if you didn't. I certainly see myself in some of these examples as well. This is not the time or the place to judge yourself, and I'm not judging you. Whenever a client shows up and says to me she's experiencing level 1 energy or feeling like a victim, I don't judge her. I understand her. I am, however, inviting you, as I invite my clients, to gain some insight here that's going to help you break out of a cycle that does not serve you. Because level 1 energy is catabolic. You learned in last week's episode, catabolic energy is literally draining. We drain ourselves and sometimes those around us of physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional energy when we spend a lot of time in this victim mentality. So with level 1 energy, we might actually lack the motivation to make decisions. We might avoid confrontation or throw tantrums. I know we're adults and we aren't toddlers, but we might actually throw a tantrum. We might throw our phones. We might have a tantrum in our head, whatever that looks like for you. But when things are not going our way, we might respond that way. So perhaps you've heard of the term energy vampire. So those are people who, whether they intend to or not, spend a lot of time expressing how impossible their lives are and how impossible the circumstances are that they're facing. And sometimes we don't know that we might be the energy vampires in our office or in our family. So we're just bringing awareness here. And there's one more point I have to make, and that is that we all spend time in level 1 energy. None of us escapes it. It is the human experience. However, our focus as we gain awareness after taking the Energy Leadership Index assessment, our focus is to invite God into that understanding, to better recognize when we're operating out of this approach and how we can choose a more empowered approach to the stress and uncertainty that we face in our lives. So level 1 energy can include thoughts or feelings of guilt, fear, worry, self-doubt, and low self-esteem. I remember coaching a client who had a child who was struggling developmentally, and they really were feeling this is not going to get any better. There's no good in this. And they felt guilty. They felt fear about how their child's life would be when they're an adult. They had all kinds of feelings there that, of course, made sense for her to experience when she got some difficult news. But she also said, if I'm going to keep operating from this level 1 perspective, I'm not going to give myself the understanding. I'm not going to be willing to believe that I have choices and options. I'm not without choices or options. So at level 1, we can feel trapped by our circumstances. But she, over time, was able to move herself to a point of recognizing there were plenty of opportunities to bring good or try options, at least in that scenario, that helped her feel less like a victim and more empowered. So the common perception, if you're at level 1 energy, is the thought about I lose or I'm losing. Or maybe even the thought like, I just can't win. Have you heard someone say that? I remember someone coming to me once who was really struggling in his role at a church. And he said, I just can't win. I feel like everyone's against me. This isn't going to work. And I was so sad for him because he really believed that. And I wasn't, trying to convince him otherwise. I let him process those thoughts, but I also invited him into seeing a few different perspectives so that he could return to his job and give it a try from an energy level that was less catabolic, less draining, and more energizing. But you see, we all experience level 1 energy at times. So in some aspects of our lives, we experience it more than others. So it's normal. But normal, however, does not mean that it's required. We will all experience level 1 energy, but it's not required. You do not have to stay there. So here are 10 examples of level 1 energy that clients and I have discussed over the last few years as they've discovered them. It kind of pops up in their lives. Once they get their ELI assessment back, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm noticing this level 1 energy more in my life. And the awareness is helping me take action that is different than what I typically do. So as you listen to these 10 examples I'm going to share with you, make note of the 1 or 2, maybe 3 that you most relate to that my clients have shared with me. Example 1, blaming others. Continuously blaming others for their personal problems or failures. So for instance, they might say, I can't succeed because my boss never gives me a chance. My boss has it out for me. Example 2 is excuse making. That's when we use excuses to justify our inaction or our failure. So for example, we might say, I can't lose weight because I have a slow metabolism. And we let that be the reason for the inaction, even if we actually want to take action. So that's self-sabotage, which is a whole another episode, right? But we can do this in the example I shared at the beginning of this episode about church. I could make excuses about, the church isn't getting any better because of XYZ. We tend to want to jump to a diagnosis to point out what is wrong at times when we're in level 1 energy. And we let that be the reason we don't take action, even if we actually want to take action or see change. Okay, example number 3 is negative self-talk. It's engaging in self-defeating thoughts like, I'm not good enough, or I'm always messing things up. They should never have given me this job. Number 4 is a lack of responsibility, which is when we avoid responsibility for our actions or our decisions. We might say things like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. I wash my hands clean of this scenario. And we take a step away from contributing to a solution. And we decide to take that step back and say, well, I'm not responsible for this. I will have no part in this. Example number 5 is complaining without action. You've heard me talk about this before. I love talking about this, that venting and complaining is actually not effective. Now, there is a time and a place for that maybe, but it should be very limited. You want to have conversations that help you gain understanding so that you can move forward. If we vent and we complain without action, we get stuck in ruminating and thoughts and frustration and anger, and we just become more catabolic. So we're frequently complaining about situations without actually taking any steps to improve them. That is venting. We might be constantly griping about a job, but never looking for a new one or seeking additional training. And this can also happen when we refuse to ask for help. We state the problem over and over, but we don't reach out for help. Example 6 is feeling powerless, believing that external factors completely control your life. Like thinking, you know what, bad things always happen to me. Of course, I'm the one who got in this accident. Of course, I'm the one who got hurt. Of course, I'm the one who got laid off. This is my life, and there's nothing I can do to change it. And I know from experience that we are actually entirely capable of indulging in powerlessness. Indulging in a sense of powerlessness and these feeling powerless feelings as a counterfeit approach to remaining in our comfort zones. A counterfeit approach to remaining in our comfort zones. We decide that we are powerless so that we can remain comfort. This happens at level 1 energy sometimes. That's one example. Example 7 is seeking sympathy. So often seeking sympathy or validation from others by emphasizing or overemphasizing our hardships and struggles, we might be expecting others to feel sorry for us. Now, to be sure, there is a time and a place for this. We experience loss, grief, pain, heartache, diagnoses. We experience a long list of things where sympathy is called for. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is if we embrace this as a consistent habit, if we become, the draining person in our homes or in our teams at work without maybe even knowing it, we can become accustomed to taking people's crumbs, to trying to get sympathy from them because we're seeking sympathy, sometimes overvaluing ourselves or over recognizing the capacity for God to work in our lives if we would turn our attention to Him. Example number 8 is passive behavior. You guys, this one is so sneaky. It's not taking initiative or making decisions. It's relying on others to take the lead or to make the changes, such as maybe waiting for your partner to fix a relationship issue instead of actively working on it together. And this is a time where the client who shared this example with me, she said, I've been unwilling to go first. I've resented the need to go first in a particular relationship, but I recognize I'm staying in level 1 energy, feeling like I'm a victim, feeling like things need to change, and they won't change because I am not taking initiative here or taking decisions in this scenario. So I really respect her for sharing that so vulnerably. Example number 9, seeing challenges as insurmountable. So viewing challenges as impossible to overcome, it's leading to a defeatist attitude, thinking thoughts like, I could never learn that new skill. How does she do that? That would be way too hard for me. I'm never going to be able to save enough money to retire. It would be impossible for me to give up my daily cookie habit. No one's ever going to want to hire me. There's a long list of thoughts that we have that we might be feeding ourselves where we view things as impossible. And we wind up feeling defeated before we ever try it. And then example number 10 of level 1 energy, that victim mindset, is a fear of change. We can get caught up in avoiding change due to the fear of failure or uncertainty, often saying things like, it's safer to stay where I am, even if I'm unhappy, or even if I don't think this is the ideal place for me to be. So recognizing these behaviors is the first step towards shifting from that victim mentality to a more empowered and proactive mindset. So now that you've heard those examples, you've probably got some in mind that maybe stood out most to you. I know I sure do. So let's go through a couple powerful coaching questions to help you implement the training that I have just shared with you. Question 1, where in your life do you most experience this level 1 or this victim mindset energy in your life? And I'm curious, do you experience it more at work or at home? Is there a particular relationship that you experience this victim mindset in more than other relationships? And what about your health or your finances? I'm pointing those out because I see a lot of women say they struggle in particular in their health and finances when it comes to level 1 energy. So I want to normalize that for you, but remind you, you don't have to stay there. So just gain some awareness about where you experience that. That's question 1. Question 2, I want you to try to recall the last time you felt like a victim amidst uncertainty or stress, but things eventually changed. What I'm saying is there was a time, a scenario, maybe where you had that victim mindset. You were at that level 1 energy, but things eventually changed. What was it? I want you to learn from that experience. What was it that led to that eventual change when you quit having that victim mindset? Get curious about that. Really ask yourself, did the circumstances change? Did I learn something new that caused me to have a different perspective? Did God reveal something to me? What was it that led to that eventual change? Okay, friends, so as you have listened along today, if you would like help going further faster without burnout, and if you want to be part of a community of women who are pursuing Jesus, go to danabyers.coaching.com/getcoached. You can join my 10-hour confidence transformation course and community. And when you do that, you're going to get your very own free and detailed energy leadership index assessment. You're going to get results. You're going to get a very clear report and a follow-up debrief that's going to give you training on how to navigate this self-awareness, to invite God in, to live more empowered. All right, friends, thanks for joining me today. I will see you on the next episode of Been There, Learned That. Are you a Christian working woman who is looking to boost your confidence and transform your life? Well, I have got just the thing for you. My online course, the 10-hour Confidence Transformation, is available now. This course is designed to fit into your busy schedule and provide you with actionable strategies to increase your confidence. Plus, with your purchase, you will get access to a private monthly group coaching call where we can connect and grow together. Get all of the details right now at danabyerscoaching.com.